It's book tag time. I was tagged, about 10 months ago to do Miriam's very first Philosopher book tag that she created on her blog. And me being an absolutely horrible person, never filmed it, forgot completely about it, and now here we are in January of 2018. And she has created a new version of a Philosopher book tag and filmed it and put it on her new channel. And she has kindly tagged me, so of course I must do this as soon as possible. So I made a cup of tea, pulled up the questions, and done a little bit of preliminary thought on this. I'm just going to have to reach over here to my laptop to make sure I can see all these questions. There we go, show more. So question number 1. Thales is considered the first known philosopher. Which text introduced you to philosophy, or which text would you like to read to get into philosophy? So I consider myself already into philosophy. I don't read a massive amount of it, but I do read a bit. The problem though, I vaguely remember as a teenager, the book was either orange or yellow. I think it may have been an old textbook of some sort, but I forget what the title was, who compiled the collection, but it was basically a collection of 17th century European philosophy, and I tried my best to read it, but I was 15, 16, no more than average intelligence, and so it baffled me. I had no one to even ask, what is this guy going on about? And of course I didn't have internet in my home, so there was no Googling on a regular basis. So that's how I got into philosophy. And then a few years later I ended up reading Will Durant's The Story of Philosophy, which is quite good and kind of along the same lines of what I had read earlier in my teen years. Prompt number 2, Karl Marx. Karl Marx is a political philosopher turning the world upside down with the Communist Manifesto. Which political event or event in history would you like to read more about in fiction? I go through phases where I want to read about a specific time period, a specific event. I went through my American Revolution phase when I was like 14. That was a weird phase considering I never really learned much. I was more into the fiction aspect. At the moment though, I think I'm most interested in reading both fiction and non-fiction about the 1960s and the 1970s in Canada. Particularly the events and the culture in central and eastern Canada interest me. Prompt number 3. Jean-Jacques Rousseau highly influenced the Enlightenment, a period which introduced critical thinking to the common people. Which book or author forced you to think more critically? My answer to this is literally everything that I've read. When I think of thinking critically, it's not a book that I go to, it's the people that I've interacted with, the teachers in my life that I've interacted with. There's no question of not going to a book with the intention of thinking more critically. But I decided to pick a book called Contemporary Canadian Federalism, which is a collection of essays on Canadian federalism, of course. I did use it for one of my master's level courses, and it's something that I've returned to time and time again since then. Prompt number 4. Voltaire once said, "I do not agree with what you have to say, but I'll defend to the death your right to say it." Which is a popular book everyone seems to love, but you didn't? Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Enough said on this one. Prompt number 5. This is a philosopher that I'm not really familiar with at all. Hannah Arendt. Arendt. And if I were organized, I would go back and listen to Miriam pronounce it, but I'm not. Anyway, doomed, controversial even by her friends, Hannah did not shy away from telling what she thought was true. Name a book that will leave readers uncomfortable but tells an important story. I thought a bit about this one. I believe a lot of people are going to be picking Lolita for this one. I haven't actually read Lolita yet, and so I went with a slightly different angle on this one. I went with The Well of Loneliness by Radcliffe Hall. It was a very controversial book at the time, obviously made a lot of people uncomfortable for that reason. But even coming to it now, it makes you uncomfortable because of the way that the main character, Stephen, is treated, the experiences she goes through, being rejected by her own mother, even the way that she tries to rationalize her own sexuality is a bit uncomfortable. So I picked that one. And prompt number 6. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star. A wonderful quote from Nietzsche out of Thus Spoke Zarathustra. Which book do you go back to for its beautiful writing? I tend to go back to Simone de Beauvoir a lot, but since I reread La Bâtarde by Violet Leduc recently, I thought I would pick that one instead because it is something that I read once and I've gone back to, and I intend to go back to it again simply because the writing is so beautiful, is so engaging. In the foreword, the author of the foreword of my edition actually describes Violet Leduc's writing as borderline poetic. It's almost poetic, but it's not. It's prose. Prompt number 7. Sartre raised the question, what is literature, in one of his books. What is good literature for you? Good literature moves and inspires. It's as simple as that, whether it inspires you to read more, to write more, to go out and sit by a river, to study a certain field. Good literature gives you that certain feeling in your mind and in your chest, I guess. Prompt number 8, Camus. Which book did you have to keep pushing through? Which book did you have to keep pushing through because you really wanted to understand its meaning? I am not always a good pusher, if that makes sense. What came to my mind here was Being and Nothingness by Sartre, which is a little difficult to understand and which I haven't read yet, and I really should have kept pushing through in order to understand its meaning, but I haven't yet. That's just what came to mind for me. I wish I'd been able to think of something that I had already read, but I just couldn't think of anything that I had read already, so I went with this one. Prompt 9. Which are the 3 philosophers you would love to sit down and have a chat with? Simone de Beauvoir, of course. She was a great philosopher in her own right, even though she's often linked to Sartre. She explores elements of existentialist philosophy through her novels in ways that are very accessible and in, I would argue, a more articulate and more enjoyable way than other authors like Camus or Sartre, for instance. Which brings me to the other 2. If I'm going to be with Simone de Beauvoir, I may as well have Sartre there. And why not Camus as well? Of course, before Sartre and Camus had their falling out, because it would be no fun to sit at a table with 2 philosophers who are quarreling. And finally, I need to tag some people. Miriam had a great list of people she was tagging. And by great, I mean long, and also great as in wonderful. But I just kind of went through my subscription feed, saw 4 channel names that hadn't been tagged yet, and so I am tagging the tea hags first of all. They're classier than me. They drink out of teacups, but from what I understand, it's not exactly tea in there. Then I'm going to tag the restricted section as well, and a new channel I've been watching a little bit of. You should go check him out because he doesn't have all that many subscribers yet, and I think he deserves a few more. That's a Night Owl's Book Reviews. And then I'm going to tag the Paperback Junkie as well because he posted like 2 videos today that I need to watch or something. Yeah, so that was the Philosopher book tag. Thank you, Miriam, for tagging me and for creating this wonderful tag.